Hello, my topic today is urban transportation methods, the methods used by various cities in the world. To give a little background, urban population has been continuously rising today. The various reasons could be migration from rural to the urban areas, increasing birth rate, etc. This increasing population is directly affecting the city's congestion rate. This increasing traffic congestion in cities are further causing economic losses. For example, Jakarta. Today, the average travel speed of passenger vehicles in Jakarta has reached up to 15 kilometers per hour. Today, more than 50% of people are residing in cities, which is soon going to be 80% by 2050. So, how can we address this problem of increasing population on the cities? One of the many solutions is mass transit. Mass transit will basically help shift heavy dependence on passenger vehicles to the public transportation. Let's take a quick look at the modal split of the various cities in the world. Looking at the right-hand side of the graph, which shows Montreal, Brisbane, and Houston, here the dependence on the transportation is basically on the private transports. However, the three cities which has very high dependence on public transportation are Hong Kong, Tokyo, and Bogota. The dependence on public transportation in Hong Kong is approximately 82%, which is very high. However, in Bogota, it is 60%. So my aim is to understand what is the society structure of these three cities and why are the people mainly focusing on public transportation for the daily commute. The city profile of these three cities. The population of all the three cities, Tokyo, Hong Kong and Bogota, is on the same grounds, that is around 84 lakh 89,000. But the city structure can be more better understood looking at the net density. In Tokyo, the net density is 13,650 people per square kilometers, which is comparatively low as compared to Hong Kong and Bogota, which suggests the fact that Tokyo is basically a city which has higher urban sprawl, and Hong Kong and Bogota have high dense compact development with high density. Looking at the mass transit history, Tokyo realized quite soon the importance of inculcating public transport in the cities, that is in 1960s-70s. However, Bogota had recently introduced the Transmilenio bus system in 2000s. This can be directly also related to the GDP of these cities. Tokyo has a very high GDP of 1.62 trillion US dollars. Hence, it was affordable for the city to inculcate the mass transit in the cities quite early. Bogota still depending on with very low economic revenues. It recently had introduced Transmilenio, that is in 2000s. So why did people shift to public transport in these cities? To know the history in Tokyo, as we see in the graph, the population had increased dramatically till 1970s, and then it had been constant because it already had existed the urban areas. At the peak, that is in 1970s, the transportation network was introduced, that is in 1969s. At the same time, with the increasing GDP, the car ownership also increased. This increasing car ownership as well as increase in public transportation led to people shifting to public transportation. There were expressways, but the expressways could not suffice the increasing demand. Hence, people were forced to shift to the public transportation. Today, Tokyo has one of the most extensive railway networks in the world and is one of the most used railway system in terms of the annual usage of the public transportation. Second being Hong Kong. Most of the population in Hong Kong is concentrated in this Hong Kong island, which is in the southern part of the city. The high population growth in these areas and all the employment opportunities in these areas leads a high flow of people all around the city to one center. However, the core could not sustain such high densities of private transport, and hence people were forced to shift on the public transportation. Today, Today, the Hong Kong has 273 vehicles per kilometers of road compared to 168 in Singapore and 97 in Thailand, making it one of the highest densities in the world. But in spite of this, Hong Kong has highly developed and sophisticated transit network encompassing both the public and private transport. Lastly, Bogota. Bogota had a bus network until 1990s, which was run by numerous private operators, but had very poor coordination, directly affecting the citizens of the city. Transmilenio bus system was introduced in 2000, comprising of 40 kilometers of busways, providing service to approximately 792,000 passengers on daily basis. As we see in the table, which shows the evolution of modal share in Bogota, with the introduction of Transmilenio, the dependence on normal buses, that is feeder buses, has reduced from 64 to 50, and the number of people using the Transmilenio has been increased to 62, which makes the total to 62%. Not only this, but the people using the bicycles has increased to 4. The number of people walking has increased from 7 to 12. But what is the similarity in these three cities? Or is there any similarity between these cities? No. All the three cities have high dependence on public transportation, but each has its own different character and the transport network. There are basically three types of CBDs: polycentric multiple CBDs, numerous low density nodes, and single dominant CBD. Here in the cities of Bogota as well as Tokyo, the CBDs are mainly polycentric and multicentric. With, however, in Hong Kong, we can still see there is some dominance of CBD in the southern Hong Kong island. Also, these city structures were developed in 1970s, hence we see quite a similar pattern. However, in Bogota, there is one particular Transmilenio line which is basically connecting the major commercial hubs, which are again facilitated by the feeder routes. So it is very important to integrate the land use and transport network, which we can see in all these three cities. They're very evident that the transport network has been layered with the land use of the cities. Also, one thing I learned from this analysis is that the public transportation in a particular city is not dependent on the area of the city. Here, taking the example of Hong Kong, the area of Hong Kong is much less as compared to Bogota and Tokyo. However, it still supports the railway network. In Bogota, in spite of being larger in terms of area than Hong Kong, it only has bus transit system. So why did Bogota only focus on bus service rather than rail service? There are two main reasons: cost effective and flexibility. As we know that the GDP of Bogota is much less as compared to Tokyo and Bogota and Hong Kong. Hence BRT, and as we know that BRT can be implemented at a fraction of costs involved in building a metro rail transit. Looking at these factors, BRT was a very obvious choice for Bogota to develop for the first public transit in the country, in the city. Second is flexibility. The existing bus service today can cater to the changes in the city development and change in demand of quantity and quality of the bus service in the city. Today, Bogota is only 40% urbanized, and it is still to be urbanized, and with the growing population, the 40% is definitely going to increase to 60 or 70%. If it had developed as a rail network, it could not have sufficed with the increasing population, but this bus service can definitely suffice with the increasing population. So to conclude, there are two main types of cities: high-rise density and low-rise multiple business center city. In high-rise density, where there is dense high-rise buildings and there is only one large CBD, it is viable to choose a railway network rather than the bus service, where people of more than 40,000 people per hour per direction can be carried from one place to the CBD area. The railway networks could be also developed in densities with low-rise development, but in such case, the routes along the main corridors will be developed into high-dense mixed-use development. One of the best examples is of the Ahmedabad city in India. The recently introduced BRT system in Ahmedabad has led to increase in the FSI to up till 5 along the main corridors of the BRT system, which has basically led to the change in the land use pattern. However, when we take into consideration the low-rise multiple business center cities where the height is only 2 to 5 stories, high capacity mass transit cannot work. It will definitely go into losses. In such a case, a simple modern BRT system with the capacity of 20 to 25,000 is more than enough to transit people from one place to another. Here again, the best example is of Bogota. Today, Bogota is transferring 40 to 45,000 of people per direction per hour on the using the Transmilenio bus system. Here I'm comparing the public transportation versus the cars. The two squares shows the mass transit density in Houston and Bogota. The mass transit density in Houston and Bogota is almost the same. It is 0.08 in Houston and 0.05 in Bogota. But when we look at the car ownership in Houston is 544 per thousand people, whereas in Bogota it is 129. So why do you think there is such high car ownership in Houston in spite of provision of similar bus systems or coverage of bus system in Houston and Bogota? The gasoline price in Bogota and Houston is not that great, but yes, it is up till it is almost the double of what is there in Houston, which is one of the reasons I thought could be the reason why the car ownership is much lower in Bogota. Bogota introduced the gasoline tax, which is 20%, which increases the gasoline price by 20%. And this increase in amount is basically used to suffice the public transportation in Bogota. Next, I've tried to introduce the city car ownership versus dependence on bicycles. When we talk about bicycle, one of the obvious examples we have is of Amsterdam. Today, 43% of the population uses bicycle to commute to work, live, or play in Amsterdam. However, in Bogota, it is only 2.3%. But one of the striking features out here is that the ownership of cars in Amsterdam is much higher as compared to Bogota, that is 278, which means people uses car only for the leisure activities. However, when it comes to work, they majorly carry bicycles. The reasons I could think of are climate, high investments in bicycle infrastructure, extensive bus lanes in Amsterdam. However, Bogota has majorly focused on developing public transport. But the city has recently realized its importance and has recently embarked on an aggressive program to link the entire city by nearly 200 kilometers of bike lanes. Thus, looking at these busway and metro systems, both busway and metro system has its own pros and cons. The space required by busway is only 2 to 4 lanes, where in metro we have elevated, so we do not require any more lanes from the existing roads. The flexibility is very high in busway, whereas in metro the flexibility is not there at all and is sometimes also risky in financial terms. Metro is very expensive as compared to busway. It is just a quarter of what is used for metro. Operating speed is yes lower in busway because of halts and uh, boarding and downgoing from the buses, which is very high in metros. And capacity is 15,000, 20,000, and 60,000 plus in metros. So there is no specific public transport system that can be developed for a particular city. It all depends on the character of the city, on the structure of the city, like the density, the land use pattern, the people, the culture of these areas. Thank you.